I've had these cutoffs laying around the shop for a while now, and I started making some bottle openers a while back. I had bought some hardware on AliExpress and I shaped up these two pieces here, and I never got around to finishing it. But today I'm going to finish these ones, and I'm going to make some more with the other cutoffs that I have. In order to lay them out, I just set the hardware on the wood. I get it positioned and centered where I want the pattern, thinking about the back of the bottle opener as well, not just the face that opens the bottle. So I just trace around the metal piece where I want it, and then I freehand sketch the shape that I'm looking for. And as I sketch, I just do the best I can to keep it symmetrical and include the portions of the pattern that I want. And it goes okay. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I just little trial and error, back and forth. Took them over to the bandsaw and cut them out. I'm not great with the bandsaw, and I have a 1/2 inch blade on there. It would have been easier with a 3/8 blade. I just didn't want to change it. That's just too much work. But I got them roughed out, and I got as close to the line as I could. And honestly, sometimes I cut deeper than I wanted to, but in the end it didn't really matter too much, and I sort of knew that going into it. After I rough cut the shape on the bandsaw, I took them to the belt sander and I went for the finished shape, and it went much better than I thought it would go. The radius on the end of the belt sander worked out perfect to make the little curves on the handle, so I just pressed down really hard right there and worked that radius just below the head of the bottle opener. And then I did the same thing down the very bottom to give it a little bit of shape at the end. It was super convenient, and it was actually much simpler than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a bit of a mess and that I would struggle to make a symmetrical shape, but I just looked at it from time to time, and if it looked a little wider on this side or it looked like it needed a little more taken off in a certain area, I would just put it on the belt sander, and it worked wonderfully. Once I was happy with the shape, I moved over to the bandsaw and I set the fence to 18 millimeters or 3/4 of an inch, and I managed to get 2 openers out of each block of wood, which seemed like a good sturdy bottle opener. And on to the sanding. This was absolutely the longest, most time-consuming part of this project. I started at 80 grit and worked my way up to 240 grit, and end grain can be difficult to sand. So I took my time. I made sure I removed all the tear out and saw marks that I saw in it. But I think when you take your time and sand well, it's what sets apart quality woodworking from, well, poor quality woodworking. It makes the finish so much better and the end product so much better that people, when they pick it up and hold it, they truly appreciate it. They feel it and they comment. They said, "This feels so nice." And that's what you want. This is something that people will use by holding in their hand. They're going to feel it on a regular basis. So you want it to be a pleasure to hold. You want it to bring enjoyment to them when they use it. And that sounds silly for something like a bottle opener, but it's the truth. I did a lot of hand sanding on this project as well. In between each grit on the orbital sander, I hand sanded with the same grit. And I tried to sand in the direction of the grain on the edge of the bottle opener, just to avoid any scratch marks running across the grain. And that was difficult to do because it's just such a short little piece of wood to sand. And it's this type of attention to detail that pays off in the end. This is what gives you a nice finished product. Once I sanded each piece to 240 grit, I misted them with a spray bottle and got them wet so that I could raise the grain. And I just laid them on the workbench there to dry. And once they dried, I sanded them again with 240 grit, and then I misted them a second time and sanded them a second time with 240 grit. And this just ensures a super smooth finish when you're done. I then just used a center punch to mark the center. I did this by eye, and then I took it to the drill press where I have a 40 millimeter Forstner bit, and it was having a really difficult time cutting through the end grain. I was doing a bit more burning than it was cutting. If you watch here in a second, you'll see the drill bit stall out. And honestly, I never really adjust the speed on the drill press, but I thought I'd just give it a shot because this definitely wasn't working. So I just had a little look at the chart on the front of the drill press, It was simple. I just moved the belt to the setting that it showed, and the slowest speed made this so much better. No burning, and it cut relatively easy. So now I need to drill some pilot holes to mount the hardware. I picked up this little self-centering drill bit. Really good investment. It's made things so much easier. If you've ever tried to do this without a self-centering drill bit, you know. Okay, we made it. Time to finish them. I like to use Osmo oil. I just rub it on with a rag, and I was fairly generous with it. I knew the end grain would soak up some of it, and if there's any excess, I just wipe it off after about 10 minutes. But after I get all of them coated, I just move them over to my drying rack, which is just a board with a bunch of screws put through it. It provides a nice sharp point for everything to rest on so it doesn't leave a mark while the finish dries. And after they all dried, I hit them all with steel wool just to denib and make sure there were no rough spots or anything from the finish. I completely forgot to drill a center hole for the bottle to have a place to go so you can get the cap off. I should have done it before I finished them, but it didn't really make a difference. So I put them on the drill press, and I left it on the slowest setting, and I used a 25mm Forstner bit, and it cut much better than it had in the past. I'd used that bit on this drill press before at a higher speed and had similar issues with it not cutting well and wanting to burn, but you can see here it's cutting through, no smoke. After I finished drilling out those center holes, I just blew all the pieces off with an air hose. I find it works a little better than wiping them off. It gets rid of all the dust. On to the final stage of finishing. As you notice, I'm putting on a coat of paste wax here. It's a beeswax, and I love the way beeswax feels on wood. It makes it feel smooth and soft at the same time, and it really makes it enjoyable to touch. And I notice when people pick up products that have been finished with the beeswax, they mention it. They say, wow, it just feels so nice. It feels so soft. And that's what I'm going for because it's a bottle opener. It's meant to be held. And so when people pick it up, I want them to enjoy it and I want them to like the way it feels. After I applied the wax, I let it dry for about 10 minutes and I used a microfiber cloth to buff it to a nice silky smooth sheen. Okay, so now I'm putting on the hardware and I'm really happy with these. They're stainless steel. The screws are stainless steel, so I don't have to worry about them rusting. I bought them on AliExpress, and if you want to know the order ID number for the product, just let me know in the comments and I'll post that information. I'm in Ireland, if that makes a difference to anyone. I know in the United States this type of thing is a little easier to come by, but it took me a while to find it here, to be honest. I definitely will be ordering these again. It was €10 for 10 pieces including shipping. We got a nice sunny day, so I took these outside to get some glamour shots. This one here has the 2 stripes, one on either side. It's a nice plaid pattern. You see the next one has a stripe down the center, so it's slightly different but from the same offcuts. And they came out really smooth. They have like a nice buttery, silky texture to them. And it feels nice to hold it. When you hold it, you just sort of want to rub it with your thumb. I'm really pleased with the way these turned out. I'll definitely be making more. The 3D effect one, I got a couple different ones out of this as well. You can see the pattern starts at the top of that one. And I got enough of the pattern in there so that you can get the 3D effect. That's what I was going for. I thought it was going to be a little more difficult because they're so small. This one you see the 3D pattern starts more over to the top left, but still there's enough of the pattern that you can see it, and it made it worth making them out of that material. And you could really make these out of any material. It doesn't have to be cutting board cut-offs. Any chunk of wood will work. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you liked what you saw, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Is it focused?
Mm-hmm.